Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. And this episode or today's episode is going to be about the passive and the active and passive voice. And as you know that I'm preparing for my IELTS exam, and we all know that the IELTS is four component. We have the speaking part and the writing part and the reading part and also the listening part. But in my case or today I'm going to focus about the speaking part. So all the grammar that I'm preparing now with you and explain it to you is related to the speaking part, because the speaking part is challenging, is very challenging by the way, especially for non-native speaker of English. And we all the time need to recap and listen to grammar. And because grammar is, I consider grammar is the half of the speaking part. And I'm gonna create for you an episode about that, about the vocabulary and the grammar, all of that. But grammar is very important when it comes to the speaking, and it's very challenging. Actually, it's very challenging for us to speak grammatically right, and to have the right grammar when we talk. So that's why I'm creating this series, and I think this is gonna be helpful for you, and I hope that. So let's dive into today's episode. So I'm gonna start in this section on the active and passive voice. So let's first start by understanding what is the difference between the active and the passive voice in the English language. And I'm gonna mention again, this is not related to the writing, because the grammar in writing is more different than the grammar in speaking. Okay, I'm focused here about the grammar for speaking. Okay, so let's start here, and I'm gonna start first by explaining the difference between the passive and active voice. So basically, the active voice is when the subject does the work. So for example, here we have, in this example I have for you, the dog bit the boy. Okay, so the dog is our subject. Okay, this is the subject, but bit here is the verb and the boy is the object. It's very clear and very simple, and I assume that you already know that. When we can see here, the boy was bitten by the dog. Our verb here in this example is different than this, because here we have the passive voice. The boy was bitten by the dog. So in this example, the verb is done to that subject. So do you see the difference between these two sentences, the passive and the active? Notice that both of these sentences have the same meaning. However, they are different in the structure. We can see here the structure, it's more different. So let's explore these concepts in a bit more details. And I will start with the active voice. So you may be wondering, when should I use the active voice? So here is the answer. I'm gonna move to the next slide for you here. So the active voice, this is like not rules, but I collect all the internet, all the information about the active voice for you in bullet point, just to understand when to use the active voice. So the active voice is best used for convening simple or straightforward ideas and actions. Now, there are many reasons why the active voice is far more common than the passive voice. Of course, we all talk in active voice in our English, okay? Let's explore some of these reasons, okay? I'm gonna read some of these reasons because we need to know this bullet point to move to the next slide I have for you when we use a passive voice. So this is just for more explaining to you about why you need to use the active voice, okay? So first of all, the active voice is direct and concise, meaning that the active voice gets straight to the point. It's also easier to understand, it's less awkward, and structure are very clear, okay? And you can indicate the relationship between the different parts of the sentence. So let's look at examples here we have. So here in this sentence we have I feed my dog yesterday. I fed my dog, our dog, yesterday. And notice that in this sentence is very clear and simple, and the sentence is written an active voice. It's very easy to understand. On the other hand, if you were to write this simple sentence in the passive voice, you would say, the dog was fed by me yesterday. So in this way, we transform the sentence to another voice, which is the passive voice. And it's very unnatural. If we talk about this sentence, it's not real, by the way. And we can see that I noticed that both of these sentences mean the same thing, okay? And both of these sentences are grammatically correct. However, this particular idea is best conveyed in the active voice because it's simple and clear. But when I use it in the passive voice, it's strange and you feel like this is unreal. It's unnatural way. So why do we use it? When we use it? Okay, we need to know that. Why we use it and when we use it about the passive voice. So as you can see here, my next slide I have for you. The passive voice primarily used in two main situations. The first of these situations when we don't want to say or don't know who did the action. Okay? And the second situation is when we focusing on the reception of the action is more important. So let's take a look of both of these sentences I have for you here, and this is gonna be more simple for us to understand the idea of passive voice. So here's our first example I have for you here. Shoplifters were arrested. So in this sentence, notice that in the sentence we don't have to say that shoplifters were arrested by the police because this is obvious. The police will who arrested the shoplifters. So this is an example of the first situation, and we don't want to say who did the action. Why? Because it's obvious. There is no need to say that shoplifters were arrested by the police, because only the police can arrest people, and we already know that. So let's move on to our next sentence here. My car was stolen. In this case, we don't know who stole the car. Okay, we don't know. So this is also an example of the same first situation. We don't know who did the action. And now let's look at example of the second situation in which we have to use the passive voice. And here is our sentence. The road is being repaired. The road is being repaired. So I noticed that in this sentence, we're only focusing on the reception of the action. And we are only interested in the road. We don't really care about the people who are repairing it, okay? We just focus about the road. The same of this, the previous action we have here. My car was stolen. I don't know who's did this action. Of course, it's a thief, but I don't know who's did that, okay? And here is another example why I think it's perfect for using the passive voice also. So here we have two sentences. I have these two examples for you here, which mean exactly the same thing. The poem was written by Shakespeare. Okay, and let's move to the next one. Shakespeare wrote the poem. Okay, on the top we have passive voice, and here on the bottom we have active voice. I think this is very clear for you to really understand the difference between when we use a passive and a active voice. So both of these sentences mean exactly the same thing. However, there is a difference. The difference is that in the first sentence, the focus is on the poem. Who's written this poem? Okay. Whereas in the second sentence, the focus is on Shakespeare. So depending on what exactly you are typing to emphasize, what the action I want you to know, okay? I'm talking to you and I want you to know which thing you need to focus about, okay? And you may want to choose the passive voice or the active voice. Do whatever you want, but in general, we use all the time the active voice. So I hope that the difference between the active voice and the passive voice are very clear for you guys. And now let's look about how exactly do you go about contracting the passive voice. Basically, if you want to form the passive voice in grammatical structure, how to use it. So here are in this slide, this is very important for you guys. And I hope you take it like a screenshot, because in the internet it's full of lots and lots of schedule like this one and rows and so on and columns, but this is the most easiest way I found it to study the passive voice in the grammar structure way. So all you have to do is use different forms of the verb to be, okay? We focus about the verb to be here. And in this column, we have all the tenses, the list of all the tenses. And here we have the structure for forming the passive voice. And you will notice that depending on which tense we're talking about, we are changing the verb. So this is the most focused part, and I add this part to be more clear and to help you more with examples, okay? But your focus with these columns, okay? So here in these examples, I think this is very clear for you to understand that, to understand how to use the tense with the passive formations, how to formulate the passive in grammar, okay? And we would say, for example, if I talk about the past simple, all right? So in past simple, where was and where plus the past participle, okay, for the verb. So the food was eaten. If I talk in the present, I would say the food is eaten or the foods are eaten, okay, depending on the tense. And this is very easy to really memorize it, because I found a lots of information in the internet and it was very confusing. And I think this is very easy for you to really know, memorize it, because you need to memorize it. You will not have this with you all the time. So I hope you like this, and I'm gonna create a lot and lot videos and series. It's a whole series about how to use a grammar while you're speaking. So thank you so much and see you next time.